In this video, we're going to learn a little bit more about the unit circle. But first, I need to show you how to find all trig functions if you memorize only 3. So I'm going to make a little chart, and you should be able to make this chart in about 30 seconds. Alright, it's going to take me longer than that because I'm going to be explaining it to you, but once you learn how to do it, you should be able to make this chart in about 30 seconds. Okay, so first of all, this works for special angles. So in degrees, we'd be talking about 45 degrees, or 30 degrees, or 60 degrees. Alright, those are the special angles. In radians, this would be pi over 4, and this would be pi over 6, and this would be pi over 3. So these are the same thing. Now, we should be able to find sine of a special angle, cosine, or tangent. Now, let's start with the 3 that you have to memorize. You have to know the sine of 45 degrees. That is 1 over radical 2. You have to know the sine of 30 degrees, which is 1/2. And you have to know the cosine of 30 degrees, which is radical 3 over 2. These are the 3 that you have to memorize. If you have these memorized, you should easily be able to fill in the rest of this chart. So, for example, if you know these 3, then it will be easy for you to remember the cosine of 45 degrees because that's the same thing as sine. So this will also be 1 over radical 2. So these are the same. Now, for these two over here, the sine of 60 degrees and the cosine of 60 degrees, all you need to know is that these are reversed. So if you have these, then you know that the 1/2 is going to go here, and the radical 3 over 2 is going to go here. And then for tangent, well, tangent, let me just write this down here for a second. Tangent is sine over cosine. And can you see that's what we have right here? This is sine over cosine, sine over cosine. So you can immediately write the tangent because this is the same thing over itself. So that's going to be 1. And here, how can I know this very quickly? Notice that the denominators are the same. So if I do sine over cosine, the denominators will cancel out. And I will wind up with only the numerators. So 1 over radical 3. And it's the same thing here. The denominators will cancel out, so I will just have the numerators, radical 3 over 1, which is radical 3. So as you can see, by knowing, memorizing these 3 values, you can find the rest of these values. And we could also find secant, cosecant, and cotangent. Let me just show you that really quickly. We know that cosecant is just the reciprocal of the sine function. So this might be more than you're being asked for right now, but this will be good to know in the future. Cosecant is just the reciprocal of the sine function. So if sine is 1 over radical 2, we would just turn that upside down, and that becomes radical 2 over 1. Okay, and the reciprocal of 1/2 is 2. And the reciprocal of radical 3 over 2 is 2 over radical 3. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So I'm just going to do the same thing. Turn all of these upside down. So I would get radical 2. And here I'd have 2 over radical 3. And this would be 2. And then finally cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. Well, the reciprocal of 1 is 1. If I turn this upside down, it'll just be radical 3. And this is like having radical 3 over 1, so the reciprocal of that would be 1 over radical 3. So again, we only had to memorize these three values, and in the end, we can quickly find all of these values if you need them. Now, there's one other little detail I'm going to squeeze in here. So you'll notice that for sine and cosine here, I wrote 1 over radical 2. Sometimes you will see this written as radical 2 over 2 instead. These are the same thing. So you can write it either way you want, but those are the same. So 1 over radical 2 is the same as radical 2 over 2. Similarly, 1 over radical 3 is the same thing as radical 3 over 3. So sometimes you'll see it written that way.